Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, All In Health and Wellness. If you're looking for a health coach, you're looking for a sports performance coach, you're looking for nutrition guidance, like for instance, a meal-by-meal plan that will help you understand how to eat. It will teach you how to eat, and it will give your body, your cells, the proper nutrition to feel great and be able to perform at your best, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. If you're looking for those things, you're looking for the key to improve your sports performance, both from a nutrition standpoint and an exercise physical standpoint and a mental standpoint as you approach your athletic event. All In Health and Wellness is able to help in these areas. Go to allinhealthandwellness.com and you'll find the contact information for how to get in touch with them and get started on the plan that will improve your life. So Zach, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
You know, and one of the things that we were just talking about before we started recording is, you know, we're both former Division I athletes, and there's an aspect of that my wife always tells me that my discipline is beyond anybody else's. And I think part of that is it's what you got to do to get there to that level, right? You're in the 2 to 3% of people. Mm-hmm. How do we take what we know, transfer it to the population that was in the 97 to 98% that couldn't get there or wasn't able, for whatever reason? But those numbers actually correlate to the overall health of our country too. 2% is healthy and the other 98% is dealing with something.
Right. No, I think, it's this mindset that, yes, athletes, in order to be elite athletes and to perform at the top of our game, right, it requires discipline, right? Yeah. There are no shortcuts about that. But I think what people miss the most is that, yes, I could be a Division I athlete, a professional athlete in a certain sport, of football, track and field, and basketball. But what people don't, understand or think about, right, is that, or one way to think about it is that, in the real world after sports, we're athletes, of life, right? Life requires that discipline in all areas of our life, whether it is sports, whether it is health, whether it is relationships, right? And in order to be successful in any of those things, right, there comes with a level of discipline. So it comes down to, right, how successful do you want to be in that area of life that you're talking about, right? How successful do you want to be with your health, with your marriage, as a parent, in your career, right? Yeah. If you want to be successful, there's no shortcuts. It has to become, discipline has to become, one of the main frameworks in your life.
So how should we measure, because that's a big piece of, success is we measure against something, right? Whether it's somebody else or a previous performance on our own. Like, how should we be measuring our health performance to know if we're actually either improving our health or just flat out, are we healthy or not?
Yeah. I mean, so it comes down to, right, having, regardless of what we do in life, life is hard, right? Bad things are going to happen. Hard things you're going to be faced with, but, that happens on both sides of the spectrum, right? Being successful is hard, being mediocre is hard. Being healthy is hard, but so is being sick. Mm-hmm. So, when you look at the picture of, how do we, translate discipline into health? I think it comes down to the basics, right? It is truly internalizing and, taking the moment to, look within. How are you feeling on a daily basis? Are you waking up and feeling like you're ready to attack the day? Or are you waking up, with aches? Are you waking up tired? Are you crashing in the middle of the day, right? Mm-hmm. To not just sit there and say, okay, like here's, I'm getting older, like this is expected with age.
Hmm.
Because that's kind of what we've been brainwashed to think. Oh, you
Right.
go to your primary care, you tell them what's going on. So yeah, that's normal. You're just getting older, right?
Hmm.
But in the functional longevity medicine space, the space that I'm in, right? We don't see that as
Yeah.
normal, right? Like, yes, that's normal to the population, but it actually shouldn't be normal with health, right? Like we have the abilities, we have the tools, we have the structure and protocols that we can
Hmm.
implement in our life to feel amazing
Yeah.
for a very, very long time. We have the ability to prevent, we have the ability to be proactive and prevent these chronic diseases that are plaguing our nation, right?
Right.
95% of the US is metabolically unhealthy, right?
Right.
So, you can't just look at, the LabCorp or the Quest reference ranges
Hmm.
and see that your labs fall within the normal range because that normal range is based off of a sick population,
Right.
right? So, you know, again, going back to the brainwashing of this traditional medical system that we've kind of been stuck in for the past couple of decades of,
Yeah.
what are the areas or what are the things that I can do to live an optimal life, right? Get back my energy, right? Have my
Yeah.
mental focus, right? Put on muscle, be able to lose a couple pounds, 10 pounds if you wanted to, right? Because that's how our bodies were designed,
Right.
to function.
Yeah.
So I think it is really looking within, right? How are you feeling, right? Kind of just do a symptom check for yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, are you at the weight that you want to be? Do you have the energy that you want to have? Do you have the ability to go all day and play with your kids, or at the workplace and continue to just crush it, right?
Right.
Because if you feel like you don't have that, right, you got to start thinking like, what are the areas that I can do myself to fix that, right? And it doesn't have to be these crazy biohacks and
Right.
longevity things that everyone's talking about online, right? 80% of the work or 80% of the result comes from 20% of the things that we do on a daily basis, which
Right.
are simple pillars, right?
Yeah.
Looking at your sleep, right? Are you getting 7 to 9 hours a night, right? Are
Right.
you
Right.
uh, going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, right? Our body
Right.
has this internal clock, you're called your circadian rhythm, that is going to be when cortisol rises and cortisol falls, right? And if you're constantly changing your sleep routine and waking up and sleeping at different times, right, your body can't get accustomed to that. So yeah, there's going
Yeah.
to be times where you wake up and you just don't feel your best.
Right.
Sleep is one big pillar. The next thing is just diet, right? The FDA just came out and announced the new food pyramid that everyone's been waiting to see, and essentially flipping it on its head, right?
Right.
Now prioritizing protein, veggies, fruits, and eliminating sugars, eliminating
Yeah.
processed foods, grains being on the very bottom.
Hmm.
As to, we were kind of told the opposite for all,
Right.
for years and decades,
Yeah.
that, is part of the reason that, we're in this, health state that we're in right now. Right.
Right.
So now we got sleep, we got, diet, right? So diet, focus on whole foods,
Hmm.
high quality protein at the top,
Right.
and eliminating the ultra processed food. If you just do that, right, just a simple thing as just cleaning up your diet, it changes everything. So we
Yeah.
got sleep, we got diet, um, movement, right, where we've
Right.
been accustomed to the sedentary lifestyle, right? Me and you, obviously, most of our life we haven't, and it's
Yeah.
it's just been kind of ingrained in us, and that's
Right.
just like who we are and what we know.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been like that for everybody, right? So
Yeah.
a simple thing of just walking every day, a simple 30 minutes a day walk has the ability to extend your life by 10
Yep.
years, right? And there's data and studies out there of just the benefits of walking. So we're
Yeah.
not saying you'd go to the gym and be a bodybuilder. If you can't do that right now, take baby steps, right? Start with walking.
Yeah.
Um, but again, if you can go to the gym, right, there is no better predictor for longevity and for better health than resistance training, right?
Right.
Lean muscle mass
Yep.
is going to be your holy grail. But again, if that isn't in your ability right now, you can start with a simple thing with walking, right? And I think that again, it just does wonders. So now we've just talked about sleep, diet, movement. Next big thing is stress management. We live in such a fast-paced world right now, and people constantly talking about feeling overworked. It's well, how are you handling that, right? How are you taking the time to process that and manage your stress on a daily basis, right? Because there's quick things that you can do to help with that. Whether it's 5 to 10 minutes of meditation, a couple minutes of breath work in the morning, taking that time to just internalize everything that's going on and kind of just clear things out of your mind to help manage those stress levels, right? These things that we're talking about right now, your sleep, your diet, your exercise, stress management, don't don't cost much of anything, right? It's really just your time, you taking some dedication and having that discipline to care about yourself, right? At the end of the day, I like talking to people about, we have to become CEOs of our own health, right? We have to take ownership because nobody else is coming to do it for you, right? No one was going to go out there and lift weights for me to become a Division 1 athlete, right? I had to do that myself, just like you did. So, at the end of the day, become CEO of your health. Those are four major pillars. And if I wanted to put another one on it that I think we've also kind of lost just with, the working telemedicine or through working remote, is there's just this sense of community, the power of community, the sense of belonging and that purpose, and just how that reinvigorates your life, and just having that feeling of that you belong somewhere, can also, if you look at some of the blue zones in the country, right? A key pillar that they all have is, they had a community, right? This sense of belonging, a support system that, where they were able to laugh, they were able to joke with friends and family, they were able to hold each other accountable, right? For, following some of these, easy things that we can do and changes that we can make in life to, live healthier, longer lives, and to really assess, where our health is at right now. And then, I'll give a bonus one since we are talking about biohacking and longevity. And since we did talk about, just the traditional medicine and how those reference ranges are based off of a sick population, right? There's more and more popping out there every day. But finding a functional medicine provider or a clinic like Nava Health, right? And we can get into Nava Health in a little bit, but that looks at labs differently. That actually take time to get to know you, get to know your lifestyle, get to know, your health goals, the symptoms that you're dealing with on a daily basis that are taking more than, your average visit with a primary care of 7 to 10 minutes, right? To truly be able to help you and guide you, right? That, they're going to run extensive labs, right? They're not just going to run your standard CBC and CMP, right? They're going to do a full workup, right? Comprehensive labs that can really tell us not just one body system or one system that, whether it's just cardiovascular or whether it's, hormone health, whether it's, your liver markers, right? They're going to look at the full picture, right? That functional medicine is root cause medicine, right? They're going to look at the body as a whole and all the systems together, where they're going to run advanced hormone markers, right? They're going to look at, free and total testosterone, your LH, your FSH, your estrogen and estradiol levels, your DHEA, your cortisol. They're going to look at your metabolic markers, right? That's one of the things that we keep talking about, right? Just the metabolic health of the U.S. is not healthy, right? That's one of the key drivers to all cause mortality, right? Because when you're metabolically unhealthy, our body is inflamed, and what happens when your body is inflamed? It leads to disease, right? So they're going to look at metabolic markers, going to look at a lipid panel, going to look at inflammation markers, your nutrient deficiencies. This is going to give us a very in-depth picture of what's actually going on a biological level and really what's going on underneath the hood. So, they're not just going to address symptoms like your traditional medicine might, and make recommendations and write prescriptions based off of symptom management, right? That's just guesswork, right? what we believe in is testing and not guessing, right?
Yeah.
We're not just going to take a gamble on what we think, right? We want to look at the data. We really want to look at what your biology is actually telling us is going on, right? Because that's going to give us a lot of information. Yes, your symptoms play a part. They are important for us to
Sure.
understand because everybody is different. Everyone's
Yeah.
labs are going to be different. Everyone's level is going to be different. So when we talk about optimal ranges, right, there isn't a set optimal range that I could say is going to be the same for you for the same for me. There is a
Right.
range, but you might function at a higher level for a vitamin D level than I might. So our
Yeah.
optimal ranges are going to be different, but that's also why being able to work with a expert in the functional integrated medicine space that it trained and is educated because they're
Yeah.
not taught this in the medical system,
Right.
right? They're not taught this in the medical schools.
Right.
It's not a part of the curriculum.
Right.
Unfortunately, the healthcare system today is not set up and is not geared towards making people healthier, right?
Right.
It is geared to you know helping people live longer, but not necessarily live a quality life
Right.
longer, right?
Right.
Modern medicine today does a great job of extending life.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. The
Yeah.
introduction of antibiotics was huge.
Sure.
Um, Obviously, it plays a part, but it shouldn't be our first priority, right? Our
Yeah.
first priority needs to shift from this reactive disease symptom management
Mhm.
system, to being a proactive preventative system.
Yeah.
Because again, just look at the data, right? The data shows that 80 to 90% of these chronic diseases can be prevented
Yeah.
through the few little pillars that I just talked about,
Yep.
right? So that's why, I wanted to throw that bonus in there of finding that functional medicine provider who's going to do in-depth labs with you because that is how you're going to take your first step in truly being able to assess, where your health status is right now
Right.
and the things that you can do on a day-to-day basis, your lifestyle interventions, your sleep, your diet, your exercise,
Yeah.
before we're going to throw medications at you, right?
Right.
Because just getting those core pillars locked in, right? That right there is going to be 80% of the results that you really need. And then that
Yeah.
extra 20, then you can really start biohacking and
Right.
doing all these cool things. You can start looking at, wearables and the cool gadgets that they're coming out with because,
Right.
they do play a part. They can help you, right?
Sure.
But, if you don't have those pillars locked in,
Mhm.
um, you know, yes, the biohacks, the wearables, the gadgets can play a part, but you're not going to get as far great of a result
Right.
if you're not, focused on those key pillars.
Right. Well, and it's because you don't know where you truly should be starting, right?
Exactly.
And
Yep.
and I think everybody knows in the traditional medicine system in the healthcare world, they're trying to get those doctors to see as many people as possible in a day, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Right.
it's
So,
just you're getting
exactly.
8 minutes at most.
We can't, it's hard to put blame on the doctors itself, right?
Oh, sure.
Again,
Yeah.
it is the system that is built. In order for
Yeah.
them to make a living, in order for them to keep their lights on, right? They are forced, in order for them to make enough money, right? They
Yep.
are forced to see high number, high count, high volume
Yep.
appointments just to be able to get by,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why they have to kind of just churn through as many clients as possible on a day-to-day basis, because they're reliant on the insurance reimbursement.
Right.
And those reimbursements, unfortunately, they go down every year, and so they have to see more patients every year, right?
Right.
And it's just people talk about the system's broken. I'm like, no, no, no. The system's not broken. It might be broken for us as consumers,
Mhm.
as but the system executes and functions exactly how it is set up to do. Right? You
Right.
don't you don't become some of the largest companies in the world
Right.
with a broken system. Right?
Yep.
They
Yep.
continue to drive more profits year in year
Yep.
out. Right? And so that system that we keep talking about, it is set up to function exactly how it gets the results that it gets.
Yep. So taking your using discipline about yourself and taking the steps to say, here's the things that are going on in my life, right? So
Hmm.
when you when you see that functional doctor and they're asking you all these questions, you don't have to go, oh, I never thought about that. Right. You're like, you're already dialed in with like, okay, you know what? I'm only getting 5.5 hours of sleep. And it's because, whether it's stress at work or, maybe your own health stress that's already got you worried, right? Or maybe it's your diet and you don't even know it. And
Hmm.
right. And it's like, it's got to be dialed in, but knowing all those things and starting there, I think, um, and to me, discipline is different from willpower, right? Like,
Yeah.
and everybody always, especially we just started the new year and everybody's like, oh, I've got the willpower. I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to make my New Year's resolution with, my health, whatever it is they're trying to change. And I'm like, willpower is not going to get you through that because it's the discipline stacking day to day to day
Yeah.
that creates the new habit.
Yeah, it's I don't want people to think that discipline is about perfection, right? No,
Right.
discipline is about the consistency, right? Discipline compounds day in and
Yep.
day out, right? So it's about showing up every day. And look, if you have a bad day, well, guess what? You get another opportunity the next day. It's the
Right.
same thing as an athlete, right? You're not going to win every single battle, right? You're not
Right.
going to win every single game, every single race, but you do have another opportunity, the
Yeah.
next match, the next play.
Yep.
If I gave up a big play, one play, I had to quickly get that out of my mind because I had the next opportunity to get up there and get it back for my team.
Right.
Whether it was to force a turnover, to make a big stop, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want people to, think, oh, I just have to be, this all in or nothing person.
Yeah.
Discipline is not about perfection. It is about consistency. And kind of what
Yep.
you were saying, right? Discipline will take you places that motivation never will,
Yeah.
right? Because motivation will fade.
Yep.
That discipline is going to be what gets you out of bed the days that you don't want to move,
Right.
right? It's that voice that says, it's time to get up, right?
Yeah.
It's time to start my day. Yesterday you said today, so let's do it, right?
Right.
You can lay in bed all you want and dream about the life that you want, or you can wake up and chase it, right?
Right.
So it's like, again, choose your heart, right? Do you want to stay in bed
Yeah.
and miss out on those opportunities? Because, we all have the ability. It's just a matter of whether we want to put that effort into it.
Right.
Um, but at the end of the day, right there's two types of people, right? There's winners and losers, right?
Hmm.
It's clean cut that way. It's those who are willing to do what's required,
Right.
or people who are going to make excuses, right?
Yeah.
Winners are built in those moments that no one sees, and the losers just they stay comfortable and they just call it patience, right? So,
Yeah.
again, I'm going back to you becoming the CEO of your health. Everything is earned; it's not given. You got to go out and take what's yours.
Yeah.
Whether that's in the health space, whether that's at your job, whether that's just anything in life that we are talking about, right?
Right.
It's full across the board, full spectrum. Whatever it is that you want to do, whatever area that you want to focus on, it's going to require a level of discipline that you want to take it to, and ultimately, what you put in is what you're going to get out.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things I tell people is that, you're preparing yourself one way or the other for the future,
Yeah.
right? It's either going to be a great, healthy, be able to do whatever you want, or tied to doctor's appointments and medical care in the system and trying to figure out why things aren't working because 10, 15, 20, 25 years before you relaxed in doing the things to keep yourself healthy at that point.
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah.
and you mentioned this earlier and I've gotten kickback on this before from people, but I'm like, they just don't understand it. We can prevent pretty much every chronic disease that's out there,
Yep.
and it's a matter of doing it before you even realize that it's there, of course,
Exactly.
because it's
You know,
building,
it, it exactly. It's being that proactive, preventative,
Mhm.
mindset. It's being, staying ready so you don't have to get ready, right?
Right.
It's what my college coach used to say all the time: stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Mhm.
And it's just coming with a different mindset, right? Again, we can prevent majority of these diseases, but we can't be reactive to it. At that
Right.
point, it's too late,
Yeah.
right? At that point, unfortunately, some people, it's, I mean, we're talking about life and death, right? We
Yeah.
only
Oh
get
yeah.
one body to live in, right? There is no magic pill.
Right.
So we have to go out there and again, we have to take what is ours, and that is doing, what might seem hard right now for an easier future versus doing easy what's easy right now
Yeah.
for a harder future, right? Because
Right.
if you're not paying attention to these things, if you continue to, just sit at home and be very sedentary and just, sit on your butt all day and, eat ultra processed foods, disease is promised, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time, right? These chronic diseases are skyrocketing.
Right.
The data is clear as day, right?
Yeah.
And we have the tools, we have the data to be able to reverse that.
Mhm.
It just comes with kind of just retraining our mind
Yeah.
of taking that proactive preventative approach and just changing, again, I can't harp on it enough. Like, yes, there's a lot of biohacks and longevity things that we can do to take you to even a higher level,
Mhm.
with things with bioidentical hormones, with peptides, utilizing GLPs, right? But these are tools that can
Yeah.
be used. They shouldn't be dependencies.
Right.
But again, those pillars, right? Your sleep, your diet, your exercise, stress management, community,
Right.
those things, those are the things that you really have to lock in. And it's going to be hard at first until it just becomes natural. It just
Yeah.
becomes what you do. Just
Right.
like we do today, just our routines, our habits, make those things habits, and then it becomes easy, right? And
Right.
then you don't have to worry as much about those future chronic diseases.
Well, and I like to think about it, and I tell my athletes that I work with this too, is to like think of yourself as already that person, and especially when they have a big long off season and then they come back around and they're like, well, you're telling me that I'm this fast now, but I've never run that fast. Like, how do I know I'm that fast? I'm like, well, because you've had 8 months to train to get there.
Yep.
So you would expect yourself to be faster. Is it hard mentally to go, I used to run this slow or, quote, slow, and now I'm supposed to be this fast? How did that happen? Well, it wasn't overnight. It was the 8 months of training that you did, right?
Yeah.
To get you there. But you have to go into that race thinking, I'm now this person,
Yep.
even though you
Exactly.
haven't actually hit the clock yet,
Yeah. No, the
And
power of the mind is everything,
yeah.
right? Manifestation is real.
Mhm.
Whether some people want to believe it or not, it's real, right? I tell my kids every single day, when I kiss them goodbye, as they're going to school or I'm going to work,
Mhm.
I want to remind them every single day to remember that you can do anything you put your mind to, right?
Right.
Because that is how powerful our mind is. You tell yourself you can do something, you're going to have more opportunities to go and do exactly that
Yeah.
versus if you're not even thinking about it, right? That's
Right.
kind of where the structure and the whole manifestation comes into play. Is if you're telling yourself that you're going to be able to achieve something or do something or that you're going to be able to run this fast,
Mhm.
you know, you'll catch yourself starting to do things on a day-to-day basis to achieve that, right?
Sure.
Because you've been training your mind like this is what you got to do. I got to make sure that I'm getting in these training sessions with over the next 8 months so that I can achieve that, because I keep telling myself this is the time that I'm going to run,
Right.
right? So it's just the power of the mind. I think for me personally, I tell myself the other day that if I feel like I'm getting a bit of a cold, I sit there for a couple minutes until I send out the troops. I
Mhm.
say, Go and heal myself, right? Go and
Right.
cure
Right.
myself."
Right.
And that's just the type of mindset um, that might seem funny, might feel weird talking to
Right.
yourself like that. But I can tell you, some of the most successful people, that is what they do on a day-to-day basis,
Mhm.
right? They're going to tell them, they say that they are the greatest, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to become the greatest just by luck, right?
Right.
No, they're going to become the greatest because they are telling themselves, they're putting in the effort, right? They have
Yeah.
that discipline, they have that structure to go out and achieve that. And if you don't have that, right, how are you supposed to get there
Right.
without a plan, without a structure, right?
Yeah.
It's just a dream.
Yeah. Well, and that's it to me too. It's like the body works better in that scenario if you're already optimized,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like when you're telling yourself these things, because if the body's a well-oiled machine and you're already doing these things, then you're still compounding, but you're getting massive leaps into where you want
exactly,
to be. And
exactly.
that's what I've experienced because I do the same type of thing. Is like I no, it's not oh, I don't have time to be sick. I don't like no, no, no. That's not. It's no, body. I'm not doing this. Like
Yeah,
here, what do you
yeah,
need to heal yourself? Tell me. Like, let me hear it. I'll provide it. let's get on. Um, and and I think that mindset, because one of the things I definitely know, because I've experienced it myself, like just from learning what other people are doing, but is that what you think, your cells 100% believe what you think. And so if you start to thinking, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm just this, this overweight diseased person, well, then your cells are going to respond to that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, say, like, fake it, look in the mirror, and if you've got 80 pounds to lose, look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, I'm a supermodel. Like, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I'm the person that can do this, right? I'm the
Yeah.
person that can lose 5 pounds this week, and
Exactly.
that goes a long way.
No, it does. I mean, it's it just again the power of the mind. Just mindset to me is everything. You have to have the right mindset before anything, whether it's sports, whether it's health, right? You got to have that type of mindset that you're going to go out there and you're going to do whatever it takes. If there's something that you truly want to achieve, you got to have the mindset that you're the greatest. That you're the best. That you can do this. You can achieve it. Have that self confidence. Have that self pep talk. Right. I mean, I wake up every day. I say, you know, uh, I'm different, right? I
Mhm.
have to be different, right?
Right.
There's things that I want to achieve in life. There's things that, I want to be able to provide for my wife, my kids,
Right.
everything about me. And it's not to be cocky, right?
Yeah.
It's again, it's just I'm training my mind that nothing about my life is average. I don't want to be just an average person, right? I
Right.
don't want to be mediocre, right? I want to be excellent, in
Yeah.
whatever it is that I'm doing,
Right.
for me personally, right? Whatever it is that I want to do, I want to be great at it. I want to be the greatest husband. I want to be the greatest father. I want to be, the greatest in terms of the health that I have.
Right.
I want to be the greatest friend. I want to be the greatest employee or boss, whatever it is,
Yep.
because those types of things mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
To be someone that can be relied on, to be
Mhm.
someone who can make a change and make an impact far greater than my personal gains. When I see people on my team winning, right,
Yeah.
that is one of the greatest feelings, right?
Yep.
When I see that I have the ability to, provide for my family, have my kids, give them the opportunities that I was given when I was growing up, if not even more.
Yeah.
What more could you want in life, right?
Right.
And I'm not necessarily saying that it has to be monetary, right? It
Sure.
it can be again whatever it is that you desire and what you value in life. But if you don't have the right mindset that you can go out there and do that,
Mhm.
you've already lost.
Right. Well, and if you don't have your health, then it's hard to go and achieve anything else, because
Hmm.
eventually your body's going to remind you
Yep.
that you can't do this, you can't do that, whatever it is. And so, like you said earlier, it's we only got one. We
Hmm.
only have one body, and so many people don't realize that until it's, and I say too late. It's often not too late, but they don't realize it until they've had something massive happen.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I've got to change my life and do all these right things. And then it becomes massively difficult, because you're also facing a healthcare financial situation that could easily bankrupt people in this country.
I mean, if you look at the number one reason for bankruptcy
Mhm.
is medical bills, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's and for some people, it is too late. If they
Yeah.
wait too long, they go in, they find out they have stage 4 cancer, and a week too later,
Yep.
unfortunately, they end up dead,
Yep.
right? And so, again, going back to doing the right things, right? Having that discipline, having that right mindset, you know, truly, understanding and having that, mind body connection of, what's going on with your health, being proactive and preventive with doing, ongoing labs to be, have that proactive ability. So the
Yeah.
second that something comes up, right, you're able to quickly intervene, right?
Yeah.
And again, find someone who knows what they're doing, who is a functional medicine provider, who can guide you, who can make those recommendations. I'm not saying that, you know, they're the end all be all, right? But the
Right.
difference in functional medicine and traditional medicine is that functional medicine, right, is constantly evolving, looking at the latest data, but they're okay with you asking them questions,
Right.
right? They're okay with, with you, wanting to know more about something versus traditional medicine, right? You kind of ask a question, and they kind of feel, like you're second guessing,
Right.
their knowledge and their
Yeah.
experience, right? So it's just a different mindset. A lot of the functional medicine providers, they started out in traditional medicine and quickly saw that they can't make the difference that they truly want to make in
Right.
someone's health and longevity in the traditional medicine space. So that's a lot of the reasons, most of my providers, that's why they got out, right?
Yeah.
That's why they work at Nava, right? Because they wanted to have that ability. They wanted to have that impact to be able to leave that type of legacy of truly making a difference in
Yeah.
someone's life to prevent cancer, to prevent a heart attack, to prevent autoimmune disease, right?
Right.
Because they can be prevented. I want to keep just harping on that. Everything that you guys keep seeing online of
Yep.
the top 10 reasons of all cause mortality, um, you know, I want to say almost all of them, right?
Yeah.
You have the ability to reduce the risk and prevent those,
Hmm.
at least, extend them out further until, obviously, you know, death is inevitable. It's
Sure.
promised to us all. And that's,
Yeah.
why you only get one of these bodies. So why not do everything in your possible power to give you the, most optimal life going forward and
Yep.
the ability to be here and to live well and to have that vitality and energy that we can to perform, right?
Yeah.
For yourself, for your
Right.
family, for your friends, your surrounding, your community, whatever it is. It's there's just nothing that's more important.
Right. Yeah, and it does, and even when you're talking about all cause mortality and like it's going to help you prevent you know car wrecks. It's going to help you prevent all because your body's just working better,
Yeah.
right? Reaction time's going to be better. All these different things are going to be better when you're the healthier you are, and so it's not just yes, it's going to help prevent diseases, um, but there's so many other pieces of the puzzle too that you get benefit of when your body's healthy. um in like you said, the relationship piece, right? When it because I remember I had a nurse on a couple of years ago who talked about she was working in a cardiovascular system, and she was talking about heart health and those types of things, and she flat out said you'd be surprised how many people we talk to that are over 400 pounds that just don't leave their house, so nobody sees them,
Mhm.
but they're there. And I was like, really? Like, she goes, oh yeah, like a vast majority of their clients are over 400 pounds. And I'm just like, it's not just the TV show that you see where a trainer goes in and helps somebody lose weight, and you go, oh, that's just one person out of no, that's like a pretty high percentage of the population.
Yeah, I think it's like
um,
75% of the population is considered obese. I mean,
yeah,
again, so we're saying majority of the population, right, is
is face
overweight
obese.
and has obesity, which
Yeah.
obviously just the increase in all cause mortality, is just it's night and day, from
Yeah.
someone who is a healthier weight,
Right.
that is metabolically healthy, has that metabolic flexibility to do a lot of the things that you're saying, right? To be able to get up
Yeah.
and get out of the house, to go for a walk, to be able to, catch themselves at a later stage in life where, that they might, they might trip, but they have that core stabilization that, they can catch themselves, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's just the importance of not forgetting that just how important exercise is, right?
Right.
Going out for that walk, doing some resistance training. It doesn't have to
Yep.
be anything crazy. We're not saying to, hey, go out and be a bodybuilder. We're just
Right.
saying, hey, it is extremely important. If there is one thing that can predict or the strongest correlation for longevity, right, is going to be lean muscle mass.
Yep. Yep. Well, and just in being able to do the little things in life that, like carry your own groceries in from the car, or, the things that you might not think about
Yeah.
when you're 30 or 40, that like, oh, if I don't do these things, I'm not going to be able to do those things.
Yeah. Yeah,
And yeah,
it's kind of
just
like
the
that out of
basic.
sight, yeah, out of sight, out of mind, right? Like
Mhm.
you said, carrying groceries, picking up your grandkids,
Yep.
opening up a jar, right? And
Yep.
just those little things that people don't necessarily think about when they are 30 and 40, when they
Right.
are getting older, right? That if you're not training for it,
Yeah.
you're going to have that ability where you're not going to have the full capabilities of life later on in life.
Right. Right. And like you said, it doesn't have to be, 8 hours in the gym trying to be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm-mm.
It's just a little bit of effort,
Yeah.
in each of those little pillars you talk about, it's just a little bit of effort in each one of those to just constantly improve. And I, one of the things that I know is that if we're just trying to do that little bitty bit and you just make it a habit, well, the next year comes around or 2 years or however, then all of a sudden you're going to realize you're doing a lot more than you used to do,
Mm-hmm.
because you just go like, oh, if I can do 10 minutes, I can probably do 12 minutes. If I
Yeah.
can walk a mile, I can probably walk a mile and a half, and you get more efficient, so it doesn't take as much time.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're healthy and everybody's asking you for advice.
Yeah. No, it's when we talk about discipline, we talk about structure, we're not saying that just overnight, right? You're just automatically going to get
Right.
all these things, right?
Right.
We're not. The key is, right. We can't make it too complex. Where, to your point, we set out a New Year's resolution, and by February, most people have already fallen off,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Take the baby steps. Start with one thing today. Keep doing that thing until it becomes a habit and just
Right.
until it becomes second nature. And then work on the next thing and the
Yeah.
next thing, right? It just compound over time, right? It's that consistency. It's the
Right.
showing up every day that's going to slowly start building those habits that you need every day in life to where, you know, when you go to the store, or when you go out to eat, right? It's just going to be second nature to choose something that's healthier than
Right.
something that's not, right? And,
Yep.
and it just becomes a part of who you are,
Yeah.
what you represent.
Yeah.
Again, don't make it too complex where you feel like you have to give up. It's not about
Right.
perfection. It is about the consistency. Consistency compounds. And it's that mindset of just getting 1% better every single day, right?
Yep.
We don't need you to get 100% better every day, just
Right.
1% better every day. And
Yep.
that stacks over time. Over the course of a year, you're 365% better than you were the year before,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
you just keep stacking those days.
Yep. So tell us about like the best way to get in touch with or follow what's going on with Nava Health.
Yeah. So, NavaCenter.com is our website. It's going to always have all of our information, all of the services, all of our offerings. We have brick and mortars, but most everything that we do when we talk about functional longevity medicine, we can do virtually. We're licensed in 15 different states, and we're going to continue to expand. We're going to expand both our brick and mortars and our telemedicine business. So if we're not currently in
Awesome.
your state right now, eventually we will be. But again, it's very simple in terms of just how to get started.
Yeah.
You don't have to commit to anything crazy. But again, functional medicine, being proactive, being preventative, it's not just a short, I'm just going to commit to this for a couple months, right?
Mhm.
This is a lifelong thing, right? To
Right.
be proactive, be preventative, to be doing these ongoing labs.
Yeah.
This is something that we just need to have in our routine, have into those habits, right? Get out of our mind of this annual physical, because unfortunately that's just not enough. I mean, there's so much that can happen, so
Oh
much
yeah.
our bodies can change within 12 months that
Mhm.
again, just waiting too long, not having that data, not having that information to truly know what's going on
Yeah.
can be the difference of sickness and health,
Yep.
right? Can be the difference of health and death and living,
Yeah.
right? So, in our mindset, doing labs every 4 months,
Yeah.
right? That is the sweet spot that we have found. Whether you want to do it every 3 to 6 months, our sweet spot is 4 months. But to get started, what we do is the first thing that we have to do is labs. Again, we test, we don't guess.
Right.
There's nothing that we can truly make a definitive recommendation or help guide you on without truly knowing what's going on underneath the hood, right? So this is
Right.
very different than traditional medicine. We're
Yep.
not going to just make recommendations and protocols based off of symptoms, right? We want to see not only what symptoms you're having, but we want to see what your blood work is telling us. So
Right.
we're going to run a full panel, 80 plus biomarkers. We have the ability to do more if they want to go further, but at least the 80 plus biomarkers, right? That's 3 or 4 times more than what your traditional annual physical is going to test for,
Right.
right? So we're testing for all those markers that I mentioned earlier, right? We're going to test for all your hormones, a full thyroid panel. We're going to look at metabolic markers. We're going to look at lipid panels, inflammation markers, nutrient deficiencies, um, and really to be able to assess, all the health systems that you have going on, right? Your heart health, your brain health, your hormone health, your gut health. We're just going to look at as much information as possible.
Yeah.
Look at your medical history. Look at the symptoms, right? To then truly be able to make profound recommendations that are going to give us the best opportunity to give you the best outcomes possible, right? Again, going back to the testing and not guessing. So the first thing is we're going to do those labs. You're going to meet with the provider for an hour appointment. Again, just something that's extremely different, right? When I say an hour appointment with the provider, it's almost unheard of, right?
Yeah.
You're not getting that in traditional medicine. Unfortunately,
Right.
insurances just aren't going to cover that type of time. So that's why if it's an insurance model, it's why you see a lot of these places be cash based, right? Because they want to be able to spend the time, with clients, because that is truly the difference of how we can truly make an impact, how we can truly understand what's going on and understand, a full body systems approach. So you get those labs, you meet with the provider for an hour, but something different that we also do that is just as important as that medical appointment is we're going to give you an hour-long appointment with a certified nutrition specialist. So an hour-long appointment with one of our nutritionists who looks at nutrition at a medical lens, right? We're not just sitting there to talk about fad diets, right? Because again, if someone tells you that one diet is best for everybody, run away from them, right? Because that is not the farthest thing from the truth.
Right.
Every person has a unique individuality about them that there is no specific diet that is good for everybody. It has to be personalized, right?
Right.
What is going to be good for you might not be good for me, right? Carnivore diets that you see on social media, right? Again, these can be tools used for certain conditions for short periods of time that can be good result, drive good results.
Sure.
But it's not something that is sustainable long term, right? Because there's so much other nutrients that you're missing that support other bodily systems, right? So again, it's we just take a very personalized, individualized approach on everything that we do because everyone is unique. Everyone should be treated as a one of one, right? This isn't a cookie cutter model. Health is not a cookie cutter model, and you shouldn't want to be treated that way, right? Because again, everyone has different medical histories, different backgrounds, different lifestyles that needs to be catered and personalized to them. So again, you could go onto our website, you could give us a call to learn more, speak to one of our health coaches. But again, for the simple thing of how to get started is go to our website. We're going to get you set up for comprehensive labs. You're going to meet with the provider for an hour, a nutritionist for an hour, where you're then going to get a personalized treatment plan for both based off of your labs, your medical history, and your health goals. That I think that's part of the piece that's really missing is that personalization part. Again, it's not a cookie cutter model. This is true medicine, treating root cause and being proactive and preventative with our health.
Yep. That goes back to you can do the same thing everybody else is doing and get 80% of the same result, but that extra 20%, it's got to come in and that's unique to you, right? And it's like, and if you don't know what those things are, then you can do all the healthy things, but you could actually be sabotaging yourself because you could have an unknown allergy or whatever to something you're doing that's maybe not showing up in a traditional reaction standpoint, but it's internally jacking up your system and you're just not operating optimally.
And take the guesswork out of it. Not to say that when you do labs, it's going to be perfect, right? There's always going to be trial and error, right? But at least you have more direction. At least you have more guidance on, the do's and don'ts. And it's one of those things. Like I said, this is something that we have to commit to for our life, right? If we truly want to live that healthier, longer life, right? It's going to be something that we're going to have to change things up, right? Your supplement regimen is going to change. Your diet, it might have to change. It all depends on how you're feeling, how you're responding, what your labs are telling you. But again, it's take the guesswork out of it as much as possible. And that's, getting as much data about yourself as possible, whether you're doing blood work, whether you're doing stool testing, whether you're doing some other advanced functional testing like mold and Lyme, which, people turn a blind eye to because no one really even thinks about it. Most providers have no idea about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're constantly searching for answers, and just no one seems to know, what type of disease or what type of issues you're having, a lot of times mold and Lyme and co-infections are involved. And, if I could tell you just the lack of providers that actually know about mold toxicity and Lyme or co-infections, those two things, is more common than most people think, especially on the East Coast. Especially Lyme and co-infections, that those diseases in itself, they're gnarly diseases, right? They are great imitators where they are going to present and show as what might seem as depression, what might seem as mental health issues, but really, it's mold toxicity. Really, it's co-infection in Lyme that, if you go to traditional medicine or a provider who's not trained or knowledgeable enough, they're going to throw an antidepressant at you. Right. And again, it's putting a Band-Aid over a symptom, but it's not actually treating the root cause. And more oftentimes than not, it's just going to cause more issues and more deficiencies.
Right. And then, so tell us about, you've got a podcast as well, Legacy and Longevity Podcast. So how can people connect with that?
Yeah. So social media, I'm on, all your major listening channels, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, iHeart. Similar to you, right? It's a platform that is talking a lot about mindset, right? What type of legacy we want to leave, what we can do for longevity, right? A lot of the things in order for us to accomplish longevity comes with mindset. So it has all types of, doctors, nurse practitioners, nutritionists, but also it has former athletes, right? It just has successful entrepreneurs, people who, had the discipline to go out and really accomplish something, and talk about their stories of, because obviously everyone has a story, right?
Sure.
Everyone went through something to get through, to get to where they got, and it's just a platform to provide more opportunity, more voice to what we're discussing right here, to give that person that ability that if they listen to it that time and they were able to take something from it, and apply it to their everyday life, that is a huge impact. And what I see as legacy to me, right, is because if I'm able to touch one person, there's what they call the ripple effect, right? If I'm able to help one person, just make one improvement in their life, right? What type of impact is that going to have on the people around them, right? If they have the ability to where they go from a pessimist to an optimist, right? Those people that, energy vampires to energy suppliers, right? It's just, it changes the people around them. It impacts the people around them. If I'm able to help someone, follow these, key 5 pillars and truly make a difference in their health, right? They have the ability to extend their longevity and be here for a longer period of time, having a better quality of life, just having that energy to be there for their family, to be there for their kids, right? What type of impact does it have, right? That type of payback is priceless. And I think, that's, really why, I started my platform was to, just give another platform, just like you're doing, to give people that opportunity to provide their voice and their little, tidbits and golden nuggets that someone might be able to take and implement in their life and make a difference.
Yep. And, it's one of the things I fully believe is that if you get yourself to the right point to where you can make an impact in somebody else's life, that's the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, why else are we here on life, right? Or on the, why were we given life, right? Is to, make the place better than we found it, right? And to make that type of impact, whether it's, for your family, for friends, your kids, right? Making that impact, leaving that legacy, to me, that's, there's nothing greater than that.
Yep. Well, Zach, I want to thank you for joining me. It's been a great conversation.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.